can you talk about your classes in the game? I guess you call them specialists, I believe, right?
We just refer to them as explorers. Yeah, we have a variety of different explorer characters. I don't know, Mary, you might want to talk a bit about those.
Yeah, so there's a healing character of it's really around their abilities and the class weapon. But like Josh said, you start off with nothing anyway, and then you can craft your class weapon partway through the match. But you do always start off with your ability, so you have that the whole match. And so yeah, the Halden is a character that has like a healing aura and can also instant revive players. And other players can get in and be healed by that aura. Valora has like an Aegis shield that can provide some amount of warmth in a storm, but mostly is there to block out bullets. So the whole team can get in there and guard, and her class weapon is a shotgun. Cruz is a lot of fun. Cruz goes really, really fast, and if you're running in his trail, you can your teammates can also run fast as well. So that's really good for map traversal. And has a machine gun that's special to him. We've got Jay, who is has a really powerful melee weapon, and then let's see, sniper character who has an EMP blast that he can set down, like an AOE that he can stun trap, like set down and then walk and then leave, and AI will come and pass through and get stunned. Letty is our big kind of EMP blast character. Actually, she can come and just blast everybody away. We had a cool moment the other day playing on the dropship where Josh blasted the winning team out of the dropship and they lost with like 3 seconds to go. It was a pretty cool moment. But let's see, who am I missing, Josh?
I think you covered all of the. Oh, and then Callie. Callie has.
Yeah.
She has the ability to bend light and go invisible for short periods of time, and she pairs that with her silent bow, which allows her to stay off of radar. So she's a very stealthy character. But the basic philosophy is like each one of these characters has a very distinct and unique ability that sets them apart, and they can use that within the course of play, and we try to design those abilities so that there isn't overlap between them and there's nice synergies between them. So as you progress forward and unlock different explorers, you can experiment with combinations within your team and see how they complement one another. And then, as Mary was saying, each one of the explorer characters has this signature weapon that sort of defines a part of their play style, and they can build that in the session using their keeper. But they can also choose to use anything that they scavenge within the world, and you can also unlock recipes for what we call wildcard weapons or secondary weapons that can be slotted into your loadout and built again with your keeper. And so our philosophy is we want to give players a lot of different tools. We want to open up a big variety of different strategies for players to experiment with, and every time you go into a match of scavengers, you sort of have a plan in mind, and then you're forced to adapt because the world is dynamic. You never know what threats you're going to face. All you know is that it's going to be unpredictable, and you're going to have to respond.
That's one of the things that helps the skill gap. Like it's kind of an equalizer a little bit. So skill, sure, it matters, but it's because of the randomness and how it plays out and the survival element. You can't just go in and do the same thing every time and have it play out the way you want. That's just not how it happens in Scavengers. And so some really cool moments emerge as a result of that, but also it's kind of, does allow for the different play styles as well.
Speaking to that, as a competitive game, do you have any funny stories about maybe ability combos that were way too powerful that everyone started to utilize? And do you have any funny stories about stuff like that?
Yeah, there are a couple of abilities that we have adjusted since closed beta that emerged as pretty OP. So Mary mentioned Jay. He has his powerful melee weapon. He pairs that with like an overshield. So every character has their shield, their energy shield that their keeper projects, and that shield can be upgraded using your keeper by spending scrap throughout the course of the session as you level up. You can choose to invest in that. Jay has like an extra powerful shield that he can initiate at any time, so effectively he has like a double shield if you use it properly. So as soon as his shield drops, he can initiate his overshield if his ability is available and it's not on cooldown, and gain that extra survivability. In addition, he used to replenish his shield using melee attacks. So what we found was, one of the big dominant strategies was Jay would just sort of run into the midst of a PvP encounter and just start smashing the other team, and he was almost unkillable when played a certain way if he could get enough of his melee attacks off. The other ability that stands out that was pretty OP was Halden's healing aura, and it's still very powerful. You can heal your teammates. You can also instant revive any downed teammate, but he also used to be able to use that to, if you could time it right, instant revive himself. Like, you would initiate it just as you were going down and you would basically come back up, and that led to some pretty OP moments as well. So yeah, we're constantly tweaking, the tuning and mechanics around abilities, and I'm sure as we go into early access and we expand the community, we're going to find other places where we need to make adjustments based on feedback.
Mary, as head of production, do you treat a free-to-play game or games as a service, is that process any different than, say, like a single-player experience, or just like a pay-to-play multiplayer game?
Yeah, I mean, just being a service and being in that mentality and being free-to-play, I mean, I think, yeah, absolutely. It's a different approach. It's a different mindset. So on one hand, we're making a game, but the sort of like, especially coming from being in the industry long enough to have done quite a few of like the bigger box product kind of releases. This is just, I mean, it's one of the most fun things to me. And I think it's probably my favorite, most exciting evolution of the industry is the kind of games as a service and free to play games where you're constantly releasing, because it's quite obvious why you get to evolve over time. It's a completely different level of player engagement that just continues and that just keeps going. And so, but from a production perspective, yeah, I mean, the language that you use is different. You're not, you don't just cut things. Most of it, sometimes you do because it's not right for the experience, but for the most part, we just talk about when instead of if, and if it's going to make sense, and things shift in priority based on what we're actually seeing in the real live environment. That's why we started playtesting so early in development. That alone too, just being able to be live and be playing with real players in a very early alpha state is invaluable, and it makes a different game, than if you're just quietly off, maybe bringing some people in now and again, but if you're just kind of making your best guess about what's going to be successful and what people are going to like. And then we have incredible data scientists too, and so we love our data because you can just watch, you can see like what we were just talking about with character balance. You see all these themes, and then you pair that with your sort of sense of the game and then feedback as well. And yeah, I mean, it's completely different mentality from a production standpoint. We talk about a lot of marathon, not a sprint. We have to be sustainable in how we work in a very, very different way. In a one big release, you can kind of blow your wad, and everybody just piles on and does whatever you have to do to get it out. I find great comfort every time we're live. I'm like, okay, now we don't have to guess at our priorities. We kind of know, right? They surface, we can see them, and it's just such a cool driving force about what's important, why, and when for your game. And so that's very, very different and very cool to me personally. You can maybe hear the excitement for me with developing that way. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad you talked about the marathon, not a sprint, because I think that's one of the biggest adjustments that you need to make is you just need to realize that once you're live, there's no going away, there's no turning off. You've got to be there for your players and your community, and that what that means is that everybody has to be in a state where they can be there, and so the idea of like crunching to hit a deadline, obviously if there's something that's really high priority that we want to get out or something, we can give an extra push, but we need to be sustainable, and we need people to have that balance in their development so that they can bring their creative energy to the table every single day, because it's not just one and done, deliver the game and walk away. We're going to be there every day and every week, listening to the community and trying to address the things that are of utmost importance.
Yeah, I mean, we've come a long way from once the disc was printed or the cartridge was made. That was it. Like there was nothing you could do if there was a bug in the game or something was not working. That was it. And
we all know those bugs; they're still there.
Yeah.
And I think I think for so many years on the, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone through a big release. Then you stick around for a little bit of following up and like maybe promoting it a little bit, and then disappear for 4 to 6 weeks, and then come back and regroup and do it again. It's just a completely different world from what we're in now, and yeah, so that's cool.
Speaking of free to play, I mean, consumers love it, obviously. But it's not an easy decision to decide to make your game free to play. In fact, there's a lot of data and research that goes into it. Can you talk about what made you decide your game would be a good fit for free to play?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost thing is we're making a multiplayer experience, and we know that for a multiplayer experience to be great and fun, we need as many players as possible enjoying that experience. And so we want to remove as many barriers as possible to allow players to come in and join the community and start playing the game with us. And we believe that that's going to make for the most healthy player base for the game. So that was probably the biggest factor in the decision-making process. And then I think the other thing from a philosophical standpoint, we made the decision that we wanted everything in the game to be something that you could earn and work towards. I think as a player, going back to my previous point, it's like as a player, if you're playing the game, even if you're not spending money on the game, you're actually helping us and benefiting the community at large, because you're being a part of that community, and we want everybody to come together and enjoy playing together. So I think for us, we wanted to make it so that everything that you're able to purchase in the game, you can work your way towards and spend time instead of money, if that's something that you choose. And then the last thing that I'd say on free to play that I think is a big challenge, but a welcome challenge, is like, if you make a $60 box product or whatever, and you can put together a marketing program and get a bunch of people to go and buy that game, they're sort of invested at that point. They've purchased the game. Sure, maybe they can go and sell it on the used market or something, but there's that investment that's already been made, and so they're willing to come in and maybe push through some things that push through friction or things that are not great parts of the experience. With a free-to-play title, you very quickly identify like what's not working, because players can download your game, start playing, and decide, yeah, I don't like this for whatever reason, and then walk away and go and play something else. So I think as a developer, the challenge that it gives us is that we really have to be focused very intensely on our players and what's working for them and what's not working for them, and we need to be really responsive to their feedback and try to build the best experience we possibly can using that feedback as our North Star.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned before, like it's all about community. So how do you guys? I mean, Mary mentioned your data scientists. Is that what you called them?
I did.
Yeah, the data scientists. I mean, because you guys have data that no one else sees. So how do you guys go about transitioning or listening to the feedback from all the noise to the actual want to say, like, I guess important feedback you want to get, you know, that kind of stuff. That's got to be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look for the data to tell stories, and I don't want to just sound like a robot, but I mean, the thing is that the really cool process that happens is that, you know, okay, so we have a Discord community and an engaged community. We have a bunch of data coming in where we can see, well, what characters are people playing, and who's, you know, and we can look at, you can very, very quickly see if something's OP. You know, it just presents itself. We don't need anyone to say that. We can see it in data. We can go off some of those things, but we look for, and also where people drop out of the game and things like that, or where are we losing people, or where's the friction on getting into the game, and where engagement to us is so important. And we just want people to engaging with us in this experience of Scavengers. And so, I mean, it's on one hand, you know, there are times where we really need to dig deeply, but you'd be surprised how much the story kind of does tell itself if we're triangulating on both the qualitative and quantitative feedback, and it's just all coming in, and we're observing and we're playing and we're doing all these things. We start to see themes emerge fairly quickly, right? And that's around stability. That's around what patterns we're seeing with things that are happening to players, maybe a bug even. Like this isn't just one kind of vector, but once you're out there and people are playing, it kind of you can quickly triangulate on what's important, I think.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, we have a philosophy that we say, like, the build is the truth, which is like the game is the truth, and that just means like the game will show you the way, and how people are playing it and how they're experiencing it is really the most important input. In addition to, like, a lot of the data that we can glean from telemetry and things, like where are people dying, what are they dying most often to, you know, how many people are surviving in storms, you know, which of the enemies are killing the most players, and things like that. That's like a lot of telemetry. We also have feedback mechanisms within the game client that we've used, where players can kind of rate, you know, how clear were your objectives to you, and you know, how often did you get confused, and have the ability to enter free feedback about things that were frustrating or exciting, and then we can pour over that as a team, and as Mary's saying, like, those themes emerge from the feedback, and you compare that with designer intent and you know, developer experience and intuition, but also have this foundation of data that you can also be looking at, and collectively I think all of those things come together to give us a much better path forward.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, people can be really knee-jerky and fast. That weapon's overpowered, underpowered, and you look at data. Well, actually, it's not. You're just not using it right. You know, that kind of stuff. But
one of my favorite experiences that I think I shared this with Mary, because I think it was on Halo 4. Maybe Mary, we were working together at the time, but it sticks out to me because we did a lot of kind of data analysis from player feedback and things, and we did sessions where we bring players in to play the game, and there was a weapon in the game that players were constantly describing as incredibly underpowered, and they're just like, yeah, this weapon sucks. It is so underpowered compared to all the other weapons, and it just stuck out. Like, you'd look at all the weapon ratings, and they were all kind of in the same range, and then this one weapon was like way down, and so as a design team, we're like, okay, this is a big problem. And it turned out that the problem wasn't actually with the power of the weapon, the damage that it was doing. The way that we solved that was we changed the sound effect. And so, like, by changing the sound effect for that weapon, it went from like a power rating out of 5 of like 1 to like a power rating of 3.8 or something, which was like in the normal range for weapons and around where that weapon should slot based on its actual damage per second. But it kind of gives you reason I love that story is it gives you a window into like how much player perception plays into things. And so you can't just go off of feedback, and you can't just go off of data, because if we just went off of data, we'd say, well, all the feedback's wrong. You know, you can see, we can calculate out the math. It is powerful enough, that's fine. If you went off of the data, with player ratings, the feedback, sorry, you'd basically say like, okay, we need to tune this power way up on this weapon. And it was only by sort of like triangulating with all of that available feedback that we're able to isolate, okay, what's the real problem here, and then address it.
Greg, you said something too, like, turns out you're using it wrong kind of thing. I mean, I think that's another funny thing is like, oh, well, because they aren't using it wrong. They're using it the way they found to use it. So it's kind of like also, oh, okay, well, that's pretty far off from the intent. But look what interesting emerging thing, and sometimes you let those things live like, okay, well, I guess then that's the thing that's fun, right? That's not anything that we set out. So I think those are some fun surprises that happen too.
And then my very last question I have for you guys is, obviously you're in closed beta right now on Steam, PC. You guys are also launching on PS4 and Xbox One. Crossplay is now a thing. Who knew, right? Like 20 years ago, never would have been a thing ever. Any plans for crossplay? And if not crossplay, maybe even cross-save compatibility across different platforms?
Yeah, I think like we have announced that our plans are to bring the game to console in addition to PC. Right now, up until now, we've been playtesting exclusively on PC, and as we look ahead to early access, that will be PC only to begin with. But we'll have more information to announce around console later this year, and yeah, we'd absolutely want to be providing crossplay. I think crossplay is one of those great things where, in going back to that earlier comment about like a multiplayer game really thrives based on having a large active community and as many players as possible that can play together and share that experience. And so, yeah, that's absolutely our desire for Scavengers as well.
Awesome, guys. Where can people go to find out more information about Scavengers, and where can they go to sign up for the closed beta?
Playscavengers.com. Go to the website. You can find out all about the game. Join our Discord. Discord community is awesome. It's a great community that's grown over the last couple of years. Very welcoming. We'd love to have more people come and join us there. Yeah, and right now the game is, so we were in closed beta in December for 11 days. We've been offline since then, developing based on all of that feedback, and then once we go live with early access, we'll be live from that point forward. So looking forward to welcoming more players into the fold.